Welcome on back. Now we're going to talk about this Eastern Conference Finals series. Not the teams any of us expected, being the Boston Celtics versus the Miami Heat. I saw a stat. It's the first time in, I don't know exactly how many years, but it's the first time in a while that we've seen neither the number one or number two seed in an Eastern Conference Finals appearance. We're down to have a great series. Before we jump into this, let's quickly recap, Scott. I know I know you're a big Heat fan. You've been on the Heat. You were loving the Heat. You've been talking about even before we got hopped on this episode just now. But let's talk about that Heat Bucks series and that Celtics Raptors series. I know you watched all that Heat Bucks, so why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I did watch it a lot. I'm not much of a gambler at all, and I even had to put my money where my mouth is on that one. It was just apparent after Orlando really put Giannis to the ringer with barely a team, that the Heat were just going to take these guys. Considering you could just see in those games Giannis and Middleton, and even Van Gundy was pointing it out. Their hands were on their knees. They were sweating more than any NBA players I'd ever seen because even when Jimmy Butler was in foul trouble or Crowder was in foul trouble, you have Iggy come in. Iggy got hurt one time. So what did they do? They threw Derrick Jones on there. Let's take a guy, who really doesn't have much skill at all, but we know he's a slam dunk champion and we know that he's probably got one of the highest verts in the league and he can just get up there and swat the shots. He can cause ruckus and or irritation. It was just never ending for them. And so just a quick recap is just they took the first three, and before you know it, like that was that. They just couldn't hit any shots unless, you can't be relying on Brook Lopez to hit six threes a game like he was, which was just absurd. So the rest of the team just needed to step it up. DiVincenzo wasn't really pulling through, and Corver wasn't making much of an impact.
Chris Middleton
Middleton
was pretty bad.
is pretty bad at the very beginning, and by that time it was already too late considering that the Heat had swept the Pacers, so they were freshly ready to go. So that's just a quick recap of that.
Yeah, for me, I definitely thought the Bucks were going to get it together a lot more. Like I know they struggled in the regular season bubble games. I know they struggled a bit in that Magic series, but I don't know. When you see a team that's top two in offensive and defensive efficiency, when you have a back-to-back MVP in Giannis who just looked dominant the entire season in only 30 minutes a game, I just expected more out of this team, but the Miami Heat really were the worst possible matchup for the Milwaukee Bucks. Just some of the interesting things that I found both before the series started and like are even more apparent now. The Bucks are really consistent shooting all season long. I know the Bucks were like, quote unquote the most efficient. They had the highest effective field goal percentage in the league, but in reality they were only 20th in 3-point percentage in the entire league against a team like the Heat that just loves shooting threes. And here's the thing about the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks defense, what they let teams shoot threes. They gave up the most amount of threes in the league. And against a team like the Miami Heat, they did not adjust well. We talk about Budenholzer making some weak adjustments. That was not a good adjustment he made. The Bucks defense is known for being they have great interior defenders. They want to not let teams get to the rim. They want to not let you get inside. They want to force you to shoot threes. And against a team like the Heat, that just did not work. The Bucks defense got stretched. It got exposed. Miami Heat shooters were the real deal. They have, I think, 7 different guys shooting 37% plus from three. The Heat have an elite half-court offense. And when the Heat were making all the threes they were making, it opened up the floor for Jimmy Butler to drive to the lane. It opened up the floor for Bam Adebayo down low. And you can't double those guys. Because like I said, the guys in the Heat are stepping up and hitting all their shots. And the Bucks, on the other hand, they just did not have the offense to really keep up with the Miami Heat. Giannis is really not a three-point shooter at all. And the Heat were, and like we said, like as you were mentioning, Scott, Brook Lopez was inconsistent. Kyle Korver was inconsistent. Chris Middleton was inconsistent. It allowed the
Bledsoe
and
too. Don't
Bledsoe.
forget about
Bledsoe was
him.
also not great. It
Terrible.
allowed the Heat to just double and triple Giannis every single time he got in the paint and not have to worry about guys hitting threes if they got kicked out to. And it really was just it's gonna be interesting to see what the Bucks do in this offseason, especially because now they only got one more year guaranteed of Giannis. The time is running out on him potentially if he decides to make a move. If he gets frustrated with management. So the pressure is really gonna be on the Bucks next season, and it was really disappointing to see. But the Heat team, I'm not trying to discredit the Heat at all. The Heat looked fantastic. I mean, 9-1 now, or 8-1 now in the playoffs. That's that's a juggernaut team, especially with all 3-point shooters. They really are. Honestly, we'll talk about the Rockets series a little bit later, but they outdid what the Rockets like to do from three. I think in 4 of the 5 games or something like that, the Miami, oh no, games 2 through 5, over 40% of the Heat shots came from three. So they kind of outdid the Houston Rockets, even what we've seen them do. So let's move into this Celtics Raptors series. Game 7 was crazy. Game 6 also with the double overtime game was also just as crazy. What stood out to you from the Raptors Celtics series?
The main thing that stood out to me, it had to have been the OG shot, right? I don't think I'll ever forget that. I could not believe that Lowry made that pass over Taco Fall, right? I mean, the guy didn't dress for like any of the games, but he just so happened to dress for this game, and Lowry just tossed it over OG with zero point 0.5 seconds left. I mean, just just absurd. I mean, I don't think I'll ever forget watching that. That was crazy.
So for me, what stuck out was Pascal Ciaco. I mentioned it before the series began. I posted something on Instagram about how much his statistics against top 20 or bottom 20 defenses versus top 10 defenses were night and day. 25 points a game versus 18 points a game. I think it was like 38% from three versus like 28% from the three. Wow, did Pascal Siakam struggle. He shot 38% from the field across the 7 games. He was 4 for 32 from three-point range. Boston Celtics did a fantastic job neutralizing him. The Celtics have a top 5 defense, so again, fall into that top 10 he struggled with all season long. Siakam got exposed. Teams know that little spin move they like to do in the post is coming. They're ready for that. He's going to have to really go into this offseason, work on his post game a little bit more, try to improve the reliability of his mid-range jump shot, try to improve the reliability of his three-point shooting, because Kawhi's not there anymore. This was his year to show that he could do it instead of Kawhi, and he kind of let them down. So he's only 25, 26 years old. He's got a lot of room still to grow. So it's on him now to kind of get that done. The other
Hmm.
2 things I wanted to mention briefly was how good Boston matched up with Toronto. Toronto Raptors are a super three-point reliant team. I think they were 27th and 25th in field goal percentage from the mid-range and at the rim, but they were like 8th in the league in three-point percentage. So that was like their main source of offense. And what I saw in there were 3 games the Raptors played all series where they shot over 34% from 3, and those were the 3 games that the Raptors won. The 4 games they shot below 34% from 3, they lost. And Boston has the second best three-point defense in the league, which I think will factor into the Heat series a little bit as well. But I don't want to get ahead of myself too much. The other big thing about the Raptors is they have the top transition offense in the league, but they really, really struggle. I think they're only like 16th in the half court. When you look at their wins, 2 of the 3 Raptors wins that they had came when their offensive rating in transition was above the league average, and the rest of the games their transition offense was really poor, and they lost those games as well. And Boston has the top transition defense in the league, so Boston really
Hmm.
played up their strengths, especially on defense, guarding the 3 well, guarding the transition well. Shout out Marcus Smart. That guy shot 34.5% from 3 in the regular season. He stepped up, hit 39% of his threes in this series, made 24 of them. Jason Tatum, second youngest player since Kobe to have 25, 10, and 5 in a game 7. And lastly, Fred VanVleet, on a bright spot for the Raptors, Fred VanVleet stuck out to me a lot these playoffs, especially, and even in the bubble in general. He's really, really been he honestly took over a lot more of the point guard role from Kyle Lowry. I know they pretty much were like a tandem backcourt, but Fred VanVleet was playing a lot more of a point guard role, had the ball in his hands, almost probably equal to what Lowry did. And he made a lot of big threes, especially down the stretch, to keep the Raptors in that game 7 for as long as they stayed in it. Fred VanVleet played a huge role in that, and I think he's going to keep getting better. And hopefully as Lowry starts to decline a little bit, gets a little bit older, VanVleet will continue to grow and help to fill that void.
Yeah, there's a lot of development going on there. Siakam and Fred are still projects. Fred really, one thing I noticed is that he really does have that range. His three pointers aren't, inch off the line. They're usually a few feet off, and when he's late in the shot clock, he's not afraid to put it up. One thing I guess you didn't really mention was the Raptors. They have Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol. Even Siakam, if he's playing small forward or power forward, they're a huge team. And when you have a Horford-less Celtics, you got Daniel Tice. Don't even get me started on him. Marc Gasol should have put him through the ringer, and Marc Gasol was only putting up 10 to 15 minutes per game. Like, obviously, I know he can't keep up with the small ball play these days, but even Serge Ibaka, he shoots a lot of threes these days. It's as if he forgot how to do a post move. Like, they could have put Tice, put him back to a bench role where he
Let me
should be.
I ask you
So
a quick question. We'll get into Tice a little bit, probably a little bit later, but why are you disrespecting Daniel Tice so much? We saw how much Pascal Siakam struggled in the series. The Boston interior defense has been great. I mean, I think we saw how much Siakam struggled, and you're surprised that Gasol and Ibaka weren't better inside. I mean, if Siakam's struggling, I don't think Gasol and Ibaka are going to be able to do much more, honestly.
Siakam's not. What I'm talking about a straight up post, like get
I
Lowry
think
just
Marcus
to
Gasol's not like
do a little quick
33,
bounce pass
34
to
year. Yeah,
Gasol on the
Gasol's like
block.
33, 34 now.
Yeah, well, you're a big man. You don't lose that footwork. You don't lose those movements. He just was running up and down the court if you watch any of the games. Siakam's driving it. That's why he struggled. He's not really posting as much as Gasol might per se. Plus, one of Marc Gasol's greatest moves is the hook shot. You don't how old or young you need to be for that move. You just have to go to the lane and just hook it in. It's unblockable. It was just it was sad to see the decline of those
I think
guys.
Ibaka had some good games. He really did show up from three. But yeah, we definitely saw Marcus Gasol's decline. He's on. This is the last year of his contract. I'm sure the Raptors will not be re-signing him, especially for I think the $25 million they're paying him this year. So we'll see where Gasol ends up in free agency. Let's jump
We will
into
see.
this. Let's jump into this Eastern Conference Finals now. Boston Celtics, Miami Heat. It's sure to be a good one. I have Celtics in seven. What do you have in this one?
Heat 5 or 6.
5 or 6. You got to tell me why a little bit. I'll go into my Celtics in a little bit, but tell me why you got the Heat getting it done so easily.
Put me on the spot here, Benj. Like, there's just so many factors to consider here. Considering, as you said themselves, an 8-1 in the playoffs, like, oof, they don't even know what it feels like to lose. Okay. Also, the Heat have one of the best home games. They win most at home in the league. But the best part, which means that they struggle away, and that's one of the best parts. There are no away games, especially they're still in Florida playing on Eastern time zone. Like they don't have to worry about playing any of these away games, so they just feel right at home. But I'm gonna go on a quick Heat monologue here for you because I just feel like I need to share
Let's
this.
hear it.
This is kind of how I describe the Heat or look at it. Imagine you have a family of 5 or 10, however many people. These are the opponents. They walk into a restaurant, right? One of the allergies, the dad doesn't want to spend money, but the mom does. The sister's a vegetarian. Grandma can only have soft food. I mean, just it's every waiter or waitress's nightmare. And the chef is just like, geez, I have to cater every single meal to these guys. Well, the chef in the restaurant, that is the Heat. They are a menu with every single item on it. And let's just break it down for you real quick. They have Bam and Jimmy Butler. So they have two current All Stars. Iguodala and Goran are former All Stars, right? So that just puts us at four All Star caliber players right there. Obviously, Iguodala is older right now. Now let's go to Olynyk, Duncan Robinson, and Myers Leonard. All shot 39.5% plus from 3-point range during the season. You got Kendrick Nunn. He was one of 3 people chosen to be Rookie of the Year. Um, I mean, who's that
Tyler
lead
Hero.
us?
Tyler Hero.
Tyler Hero. I mean, I haven't even mentioned him. I mean, great standout. He's attacking. He's a great shooter. You have Derek Jones. He's slam dunk champion. How relevant is that? As we saw, that vertical and that length played a factor in stepping up in the role to guard Giannis or Middleton. And and then Haslam. I mean, we have a veteran, a guy that's just been through it all. And he's a
Hasn't be playing a
great
lot of minutes, I'm sure.
hasn't played at all, but he's a great liaison from the coaches to the players, where he can really be that role model to the young core of Nunn, Hero, Robinson, Bam. He has the experience. He was still part of that Heat team that went to all those finals. And then lastly, the whole point is Nunn and Myers Leonard. I'm pretty sure both of them, individually put up 50 or 60 plus starts in the regular season this year. Myers Leonard, I don't think he even has a single minute logged in the playoffs. You're telling me
He played a
that
bit, but yeah, not that
you
much, but he played a bit.
you're a playoff team and you have two regular season starters that aren't even playing. Think about your favorite team and having two of your starters not even playing the playoffs. I mean, it just like I said, I mean, Middleton and Giannis, they were gassed, okay? And it's going to be the same for Brown and Tatum. They perfectly match up. Brown and Tatum are the same size as Iguodala, Crowder, Butler, Derek Jones. It is a perfect matchup. I mean, they're just going to get run through so tired. It's just going to be that the Celtics bench is great, but they're only great, I think, from a defensive perspective. The Heat bench, it's a full-on team. I mean,
All right,
I don't know. What do you have to
yeah.
say? What do you have to
Well,
say?
there's a lot of things I didn't like about what you said, but I'll skip over those for now.
That's a
I'll skip over
shame.
those for now and just get into why I have the Celtics beating the Heat. The Celtics are completely different than the Bucks. First and foremost, the Milwaukee Bucks are built around a guy in Giannis who is really, let's be honest, he's amazing around the rim. He's a great interior offensive player, but his mid range game is inconsistent. His 3-point shooting is even more inconsistent. They have one 3-level scorer in Chris Middleton who can actually score from three from mid range and getting to the hoop, but he really also inconsistent as we saw in that series. And then there's everyone else. It's kind of a system that the Mike Budenholzer and the Milwaukee Bucks run. Then we get to the Boston Celtics. We got three-level scorers who can drive, shoot from the mid-range, and shoot from three in Kemba, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown. It's going to make it a lot harder for the Heat to double any particular person. They're going to have to be a lot more worried about guarding the three-point arc compared to what they were against the Bucks when there was really, like I said earlier, the Bucks were the 20th best three-point shooting team in the league. We haven't even mentioned Gordon Hayward's possible return at some point in the series. Marcus Smart has been a whole other dynamic adds a whole other dynamic. He makes the Celtics even more hard to guard. Suddenly you have a fourth guy on the floor who can hit threes. You have a guy who is first team all defense for a reason. So let me get into a little bit more of the specific matchups and specific areas of the court I'm looking at. Raptors and Heat, the one comparison I'm going to make about those teams, they're both fantastic three-point shooting teams. As I mentioned earlier, games 2 through 5 of the Heat-Bucks series, over 40% of the Miami Heat shots came from three. The Toronto Raptors were similar. A lot of their shots came from three for a lot of that series against the Celtics. The Celtics are the second best team in the entire NBA at defending the three, and they already proved that they could do that against the Raptors. That they can, a team that's going to shoot high volume and have a lot of three-point shooters, they proved that they could do that when they held the Raptors to pretty low percentages. Let me go to the second point that you brought up. You brought up Bam Adebayo and how great he was in the last series and how great you expect him to be this series. Boston has fantastic interior defense. They allow one of the lowest field goal percentages at the rim in the league. They were amazing covering Pascal Ciaco. You disrespected Daniel Tice a lot, but they did a great job on Pascal Siakam. Bam Adebayo is another guy. He's a great center, but he's also undersized. I think he's only like 6'9", so he's really not as big as a guy like Embiid who dominated the Celtics in that first round series. I would say Bam Adebayo is more similar in size to Pascal Siakam, and Tice did a fantastic job on him. Tice does not really impact the box score. He's not going to get you a lot of points, rebounds, and assists, but he did hold Siakam to a terrible series, and I can imagine something similar happening to Bam. And now let's get to Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's a star, superstar, debatably top 10 player in the league. Fantastic at the rim, fantastic mid-range. His three-pointer was a lot better in this playoffs than we've seen generally what he shoots on the floor. The Bucks did not really want to put Giannis Antetokounmpo on Jimmy Butler last series. If I'm the Celtics, there's one man who I'm putting on Jimmy Butler for as much of this series as possible. One guy, Marcus Smart. I think Marcus Smart defending Jimmy Butler can be the absolute X factor in this series, make Jimmy Butler's life hell, make it miserable, and really just limit a lot of what we saw. He was driving and kicking all day. He was getting to his spot, hitting all the mid-ranges he wants, getting to his spot, getting all the layups he wanted. I think Marcus Smart is the excellent player that you are going to put on Jimmy Butler and try to limit him. The Celtics defense has been fantastic the entire series. I think they've allowed under 100 points. I don't have the exact number, but a lot of their games, even the double overtime game, the Raptors scored I think only like 90 some points in regulation before the overtime started. And I just think that the Celtics team is entirely different from the Bucks team. Main points again, a ton of three-level scorers, great defending the three, and again the Marcus Smart on Jimmy Butler as well as Daniel Tice, Jason Tatum, and Robert Williams off the bench, giving Bam Adebayo a tough time. I mean, I really like the Celtics in this one. I have it in 7, but I could see it being 6.
You know, Benj, I mean, I don't disagree with you. They are one of the top teams in the league in defending the three. They also are 5th in the league in blocks, which is kind of very surprising. The Miami Heat are second in the league in 3-point percentage. So obviously that can be stopped. And they also are like 29th or 30th in 2-point field goal attempts. So especially going up a team that's going to block all those shots inside the paint, like that's not a good look for the Heat by any means. But the Heat are also like fifth in the league in free throws, so they know how to draw fouls. They also are around, top five in the league, I think, in assists, so they know how to move the ball. There's just too many facets. I know you bring up the amount of scorers that the Celtics have. However, my whole point is that if there's a team in these playoffs that has the people to defend all of those scores between Kemba, Jalen, and Jason, it is the Heat. Okay, they have all those players to defend, and who cares if Marcus Smart can defend Jimmy Butler? Because even Jimmy says it himself. Jimmy only tries when he needs to, and he hasn't even tried yet. He doesn't do anything except for draw fouls. If you quantitatively and qualitatively, a lot of his points are coming from the free throw line
Mm-hmm.
outside of that 140-point game that he had. He really just lets Duncan and Tyler run around and shoot threes. If that's not open, Bam goes inside. They go a little pick and roll action. Um, they're really everywhere with it. I want to bring up my X factor. So your X factor, you would say, is Marcus Smart.
Yes.
Okay, well my X factor is Goran Dragic. No one on ESPN, no one on Bleacher Report, no one on Twitter, no one talks about this guy. People even forget, okay? He was in the running for the Sixth Man of the Year award, but he was, sometimes has a starting role position, so he only got a few votes here and there. Um, but people are forgetting, this guy is an all-star. This guy is a guard who can get any shot he wants from the three-point line to inside. He's a prolific scorer. He has American style moves. He's got European style moves. And there's a direct correlation. If you look at Goran Dragic's plus minus ratio in all of the Heat playoff games, specifically in the Bucks series, there's a direct correlation. By the higher Goran's plus minus ratio is, the more the Heat win by. The Heat's loss to the Bucks was when Goran had a plus minus of -2. Every time else, it's in the positive range. And when they have those 10-point wins, that's because Goran's plus minus is way up there. I mean, that's the problem. That is the problem. We don't even remember Goran. We can't even talk about him. We're worried about Jimmy
I remember
Butler,
Goran Dragic. Don't worry.
Duncan Robinson, Bam, Tyler, this and that. Goran's just sneaking around. The Heat get out to an early lead always. I think in the Pacers series, I think the Heat pretty much always got out to a nice jump. And if they didn't do it in the first quarter, the second quarter, they always made sure they're going into halftime with a solidified lead. And by that time, it's too late to come back because that means you have to match them three-pointer for three-pointer. So I just don't know. The Heat have more wisdom than the Celtics. The oldest Celtics player is 30 years old, Brandon Wanamaker. Your guy, Kemba
Brad
Walker,
Wanamaker, not Brandon.
Brad Wanamaker. You got Kemba, Jason, Jalen. Yeah, obviously they're all young and they've had not Kemba, but Jason and Jalen have a little bit of playoff experience, but not compared to that of Udonis. I mean, obviously he doesn't play, but he brings that leadership. Iggy, he's a Finals MVP. Jimmy Butler has been in the playoffs quite a bit, and some of their other cast has been in and out through different teams as well. So it's just a perfect storm. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, I bring up some quantitative, some qualitative stuff. It's do the Celtics, like, they always make it to the far in the playoffs, right? But they never make it to the finals. They don't have that extra juice. They're always one player too short. They don't have a bench. They don't have a bench.
Jimmy Butler hasn't had that juice in his career to get to the finals. If you really want to talk about that, I mean, I think you're not giving the Celtics enough credit, especially when you talk about experience. I know you talk about how all the experience that the Heat, all the experience the Heat have, Udonis Haslem, but I mean, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown went to an Eastern Conference Finals 2 years ago, went to an Eastern Conference semifinals last year. Marcus Smart was there along with them for all those playoff series. Kemba Walker's been the leader, not in the playoffs, but he's been a leader for a team in the regular season. Gordon Hayward, who hopefully will be back by Game 2. I know he's missing Game 1, but he led some Jazz teams on some upsets. I know they knocked off the Clippers 4 years ago in the playoffs, led by Gordon Hayward. They knocked off the Chris.
He's not playing. He's not
He'll be
playing.
back.
I love Gordon.
He will be
As I
back.
said at the beginning, I'm a Butler fan in and out. He look, he always says he's going to be back. Even if he's back for game 2 or game 3, like we always see after he comes back from injury, he's never as strong as he usually is. He needs time to get into it, and that's very obvious. And
But here's the
pretty much
thing. Here's
every
the thing, though.
injury he's
Marcus
had.
Smart stepped up. They could leave Gordon Hayward to come off the bench. He doesn't have to be giving them 30 minutes like he would if he was healthy. He can give them 15, 20 minutes off the bench, and they can expect Marcus Smart to come into that starter role that he just did the entire Raptors series and do it effectively. And I think the Heat are a great team. Their 3-point shooting is fantastic. Butler and Bam are a great combination. I just think that at the end of the day, that in this series, I mean, I think we saw a lot of scoring droughts. The Bucks went on a lot of scoring droughts in that Heat series where they really just struggled. They were missing their shots. Giannis was getting doubled and tripled in the paint. And I think with the Celtics, there's just a lot more options, a lot more variability. If one guy's not going, there's a bunch of other scorers that are there ready to go and step up.
I agree that there are more options within the Celtics starting 5, right? But as I was saying, they're going to get tired. Will you please analyze the Celtics bench? And then, similar to our Nuggets Clipper debate, we were, pretty indifferent. They are very even, both of those teams on the bench. But let's do a Celtics versus Heat bench, because in the playoffs, the bench really does come important here. So please compare.
So I know you bring up the bench as interesting points, but I think that when the Celtics don't need their bench to be doing as much scoring as a team like the Clippers or the Nuggets. Like the Clippers and Nuggets have two, and even the Heat have. The Celtics have 4 guys in their starting lineup. Debatably 5 guys if Gordon Hayward plays well that can give you double. They have 5 guys that can give you double figures almost every single night, and you have guys like Tatum and Brown and give you. Tatum, Brown, and Kemba could each give you 25. There's 75 points right there. They don't need as much bench scoring as a team like the Clippers does, where it's only 2 guys who are primary scorers in Kawhi and PG, or 2 guys like Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, or even the Miami Heat, where it's Jimmy Butler and Bam. They don't need as much from the bench when they have 4 guys who can give you as much scoring output as those 4 guys on the Celtics do. We saw it in the Raptors series. I mean, you can expect almost 30 points from Tatum, Brown, Kemba, or Marcus, or at least you can expect almost 30 points from either Kemba, Jalen, or Tatum every single night, and probably 20 points from 2 of 3 between the other 3 guys.
I mean, look, I agree. I do agree. I guess you could say the same thing. I mean, well, I would like to say the same thing about Giannis and Middleton, but they've proven that they can't do it.
And outside of Giannis and Middleton, like there was no one else really on that Bucks team that could step up for sure and give you points on a given night outside of Giannis and Middleton.
Okay, well, we don't even have to look at the Bucks. I mean, I'm happy to go as far as the first round. Victor, Malcolm, or TJ. One of the 3 of them could put up 30 points. I mean, I don't think that's arguable. I think one of the 3 of them could, and they have done it. Malcolm did it when Victor wasn't playing in the regular season.
If I'm gonna be honest with you, I would take, like, if we're ranking Tatum, Kemba, Brown, Brogdon, Warren, and Oladipo, I have the 3 Celtics in front of all 3 of the Pacers players. That's just me, though. That's just me.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I would definitely have Victor ahead of Jalen, arguably when healthy at the same rate as Kemba.
But you can't say
are we talking TJ Warren or bubble TJ Warren?
You can't say when healthy. You can't say when healthy because
True?
we saw Oladipo and also TJ Warren. TJ Warren in the
regular TJ Warren
regular.
I would rank him above all 3 of those guys.
TJ Warren regular season versus TJ Warren in that Miami Heat series when he was night and day difference. I don't think he gave us 30 once in the Heat series.
Yeah, but you wonder why, because Jimmy was guarding him. When Jimmy was out, Crowder was. He always had someone on him at all times. He played a lot of minutes in those games, which he normally doesn't, put up that many minutes. And you could see he was sweating. He was gassed. Have you ever watched TJ Warren in a post-game interview? Dude could barely even speak. Like, he was so tired. I don't know. Like,
all right, we got to wrap this up, but this is going to be a fantastic series. Definitely looking forward to trash talking to you about this one as over text and calls the next couple weeks or so. So just to
It
recap,
really is a very even matchup. It's a very even matchup, and we could talk all
we
day about
could.
it, going stat for stat. What we see here and there.
So
So
just to recap real quick again, I have Celtics in 7 over the Heat. Scott, do you want to finalize that number of games for us?
I'll do
Heat in
6.
6. All right, sweet. So stick around. Come up in just a second. We're going to be talking about what we saw in the Rockets and Lakers series, and Scott is going to be giving us his predictions for what he expects in the finals, who will ultimately be crowned the NBA champion this season. Coming up in just a second, so stay tuned.